On July 17, 1955, Disneyland ran out of food in a matter of hours. 28,000 people showed up. Half of them had counterfeit tickets. The temperature hit 101 degrees, the asphalt was still melting, and the man who built the place could not find a cup of coffee in his own park. That story is number 14. And number 3, a snack sitting in your pantry right now was invented because of what happened at Disneyland that first summer. Hit that subscribe button. Let us count down the 25 foods Americans actually ate at Disneyland on opening day. Number 25, popcorn from the striped carts. Before a single ride started running on July 17th, the smell of popcorn was already drifting down Main Street. Walt Disney insisted on it. He believed the smell of fresh popcorn was the smell of a good time, and he positioned those red and white striped carts exactly where the breeze would carry it toward the front gates. A box cost a dime. The carts were run by United Paramount Theaters, the same company that popped corn in movie houses across America. So the flavor was literally the taste of going to the movies. Fathers bought a box to keep the kids quiet in the ticket line. Mothers rationed it out one handful at a time. And here is the detail everyone forgets. On a day when almost everything else sold out, the popcorn carts kept popping, because popcorn was one of the only foods in the park that could not run out of ingredients faster than a man could shovel kernels into a kettle. For thousands of families on Black Sunday, popcorn was not a snack. It was lunch. Number 24, 10-cent hot dogs. The humble hot dog was the workhorse of opening day. Snack stands scattered through the park sold them wrapped in a napkin, mustard only. No fancy toppings, no choices to slow the line down. Swift & Company, one of the biggest meat packers in America, had its name all over the park, and a Swift's premium Frank at Disneyland tasted exactly like the one from your neighborhood grocer, which was precisely the point. Walt wanted food that felt familiar, food a family from Kansas would trust. A hot dog and a soda came in under $0.25, which mattered when admission was $1 for adults, 50 cents for kids, and every ride cost extra on top of that. Fathers doing the math in their heads at the ticket booth knew the hot dog was the play. Kids ate them walking, dripping mustard on brand new souvenir hats. By mid-afternoon on opening day, the stands were selling out, and a plain hot dog suddenly felt like winning the lottery. Number 23, the 35-cent hamburger. If the hot dog was survival, the hamburger was luxury you could justify. 35 cents in 1955, which sounds like nothing until you remember a hamburger at a roadside diner back home ran about 20 cents. People grumbled about the markup. Then they paid it. The burgers came off flat-top grills at the quick service stands. Thin patties, soft buns, a smear of mustard, and a pickle chip, cooked fast because the lines never stopped. There was no such thing as theme park food culture yet. No churros, no turkey legs. So the hamburger had to carry the whole load, and it did. Ask anyone who was actually there as a child what they ate at Disneyland in 1955, and before they mention a single ride, most of them will say the same thing: a hamburger. Number 22, the 45-cent cheeseburger. Adding cheese cost an extra dime, and in 1955, that dime meant something. A dime was a full ride on the Main Street vehicles. A dime was a comic book. So the cheeseburger became a quiet status symbol on opening day, the thing the family splurging on their once-a-year vacation ordered, while the family stretching every dollar stuck with plain. The cheese was American, of course. A single orange slice melted over the patty until it draped down the sides. Children begged for it. Fathers caved about half the time. And that 10-cent upcharge taught the entire hospitality industry its first great lesson: that people on vacation will pay a little more for a little magic, even when the magic is a slice of processed cheese. Every premium topping at every theme park in America traces its family tree back to that dime. Number 21. 15-cent ice cream bars, half melted. It was 101 degrees on July 17th. The ice cream bars never stood a chance. Vendors sold chocolate-covered bars for 15 cents from coolers that could not keep up with the Southern California heat, and photographs from that day showed children with vanilla running down their wrists to the elbow, mothers chasing them with handkerchiefs. People licked their fingers and got right back in line for another one. On a day when the drinking fountains were not working, and we will get to why, a melting ice cream bar was hydration, sugar, and air conditioning, all in one. 15 cents, gone in 90 seconds, worth every penny. There are people alive today, people in their late 70s now, whose single, clearest memory of the most famous opening day in entertainment history is not Walt Disney's dedication speech, or the castle, or the television cameras. It is standing on soft, sticky asphalt in Frontierland, racing the sun to finish an ice cream bar. The sun usually won. Number 20. Ice-cold Coca-Cola at the refreshment corner. At the end of Main Street on the corner facing the castle, Coca-Cola set up shop on day one, red and white striped awnings, a ragtime piano, and the coldest drink in the park. A Coke cost a dime, served in a paper cup with shaved ice, and on Black Sunday the line stretched down the block. Coca-Cola was one of the 47 companies that signed leases inside Disneyland before it opened, and their corner was prime real estate, the last thing you passed before the castle, and the first thing you ran back to when the heat got you. By early afternoon, they were rationing ice. By late afternoon, some stands in the park had nothing cold left at all. Grown men who had survived the Depression and a world war stood in that line without complaining, because a cold Coca-Cola on a brutal day was one of the small luxuries their whole generation had agreed was worth waiting for. Number 19. Frosty mugs of Pepsi at the Golden Horseshoe. Here is a piece of trivia that settles bar arguments. Coca-Cola and Pepsi were both inside Disneyland on opening day, and they never crossed paths. Coke owned Main Street. Pepsi sponsored the Golden Horseshoe Saloon in Frontierland, a gorgeous gold and white music hall where the strongest thing you could order was a Pepsi in a frosted mug, because Walt banned alcohol from his park entirely. 4 days before opening day, on July 13th, Walt threw his 30th wedding anniversary party for his wife, Lillian, inside that saloon. Guests watched the Can show, and Walt, a few drinks in from his private stash, climbed down from his box seat to the stage, using the set decorations like a ladder. On July 17th, regular Americans sat in those same seats, drank 10-cent Pepsis, ate simple saloon sandwiches, and watched the same stage. For the price of a soft drink, a machinist from Long Beach got the same show. A Hollywood crowd got 4 nights earlier. First pattern break. Here is the part of the story nobody tells you. Walt Disney could not afford to feed you. He was so broke building Disneyland that he borrowed against his own life insurance, and there was no money left to run restaurants. So he leased them out. 47 companies: Swift, Carnation, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Maxwell House, Frito paid Disney for the right to feed his guests. Every meal on this list was also an advertisement. Every hot dog was a Swift's commercial you paid for. It was the most brilliant financing trick in restaurant history, and it is why the food at Disneyland in 1955 tasted like the inside of an American grocery store, because it was one. Number 18. Carnation Ice Cream Sundaes. The Carnation Ice Cream Parlor opened on Main Street on day one, and it was everything a 1955 ice cream parlor was supposed to be. Marble counters, wire-back chairs, soda jerks in bow ties and paper hats. A sundae ran about a quarter. Hot fudge or strawberry, whipped cream from a cold steel canister, 1 cherry on top. Carnation, the evaporated milk giant, supplied dairy to more than a dozen eating spots across the park, but the parlor was their crown jewel, a life-size advertisement you could sit down inside. Mothers who stretched Carnation, evaporated milk into 100 budget desserts at home, now watch their children eat the real, extravagant thing. On opening day, the parlor was mobbed from the first hour, and it never really stopped. That little corner of Main Street stayed in business for over 40 years, and the Carnation name is still on that street today, which makes it one of the longest-running restaurant partnerships in American history. It started with a 25-cent sundae on the hottest Sunday of the year. Number 17, the 35-cent milkshake. Same price as a hamburger, and people argued even then about which was the better buy. The shakes at Disneyland were the real thing. Hand-dipped ice cream and cold milk buzzed together on a green Hamilton Beach spindle mixer, served so thick the paper straw was mostly decorative. Chocolate, vanilla, strawberry. That was the whole menu, and nobody wanted more. For teenagers on opening day, and there were thousands of them, the milkshake was the natural order of things, because in 1955 the milkshake was the official drink of being young in America. The malt shop was where you met your friends, met your girlfriend, played the jukebox. Disneyland simply took the malt shop and put a castle at the end of the street. One kid who was 14 that summer said years later that he spent his entire ride budget in the first 2 hours, then spent the rest of the day nursing one milkshake and watching the Mark Twain go by. He called it the best day of his childhood. Number 16, dill pickles from the barrel at Swift's Market House. This one, people who were there never forget. Swift's Market House on Main Street was built to look like a turn-of-the-century general store. Checkerboard by the pot-bellied stove, crank telephones on the wall with party line conversations you could listen in on, and a real oak barrel full of dill pickles in brine. A nickel bought you a fat, sour, ice-cold pickle straight from the barrel, fished out with tongs, and handed over dripping. On a 101-degree day, that cold, salty pickle was arguably the most refreshing thing in the entire park, and it cost half what a soda did. And the barrel was not nostalgia to the adults on opening day. Grandparents in 1955 had actually shopped at stores like that, and they stood there telling their grandchildren this is how it really was, while the kids gnawed their pickles. Walt built the whole park to trigger exactly that conversation. The pickle barrel did it for a nickel. Number 15, fresh donuts from the Puffin Bake Shop. Tucked onto Main Street was a little bakery called the Puffin Bake Shop. And on opening morning, it was one of the smartest first stops in the park. Glazed donuts, cinnamon rolls, and pastries. Most items a dime or 15 cents. Baked fresh, with the smell pouring out the doors and mixing with the popcorn on the street. Families who had driven in from Arizona and Nevada who had lined up outside the gate since dawn had skipped breakfast to get there. The Puffin was where they fixed that. There was a pattern with everything on Main Street that day, and the bake shop is the purest example. Nothing they sold was exotic. You could buy a glazed donut anywhere in America, but you could not buy one on a street where a steam train whistled overhead and a castle stood at the end of the block. The donut was ordinary. The place made it unforgettable. That formula, ordinary food inside an extraordinary frame, is the entire theme park food industry, invented in one summer. Number 14, Maxwell House Coffee, if you could find it. Here is the story I promised you. 16 locations across Disneyland proudly served Maxwell House coffee. Good to the last drop, but the actual Maxwell House coffee shop on Main Street was not finished in time for opening day. And on the morning of July 17th, a mill foreman named Scotty Cribbs was walking down Main Street with a cup of coffee in each hand when he ran straight into Walt Disney. Scotty froze, certain he was about to be fired for strolling around on the biggest day of his boss's life. Instead, Walt stopped him and asked one question. "Where did you get that? And where can I get one?" The man who had just spent $17 million building the happiest place on earth could not locate a cup of coffee inside it. The crews had barely finished painting the night before. Some of them, the story goes, were still working as guests walked in. Coffee eventually flowed at a dime a cup, and Disneyland went on to pour oceans of it. But on day one, even Walt had to hunt for his. Number 13. Sandwiches from the Space Bar Automat. In Tomorrowland, the future of food was a wall of little glass doors. The Space Bar was Disneyland's version of the automat, the vending machine restaurants famous in New York, where you dropped coins in a slot, opened a small window and pulled out a sandwich, a slice of pie, a cold drink. No waitress, no counterman, just gleaming machines, which in 1955 felt like eating on a spaceship. Kids on opening day begged for automat sandwiches, not because the food was better, it was a ham sandwich, but because the ritual was irresistible. You got to buy your own lunch from a robot wall. Fathers handed over the coins and let the 6-year-old work the door, and that 6-year-old remembered it for 70 years. The funny part, looking back, is what Tomorrowland got wrong. They predicted we would all eat from coin-operated walls by 1986. Instead, the automat went extinct. But watch someone tap a screen at a fast food kiosk today and tell me the Space Bar wasn't onto something. Number 12. Free milk at the Dairy Bar. Second pattern break. Now, let me tell you why they call it Black Sunday. The park expected 15,000 invited guests. More than 28,000 came, waving counterfeit tickets that a local printer had been selling on the side. One enterprising man leaned a ladder against the back fence and charged $5 a head to climb over. Traffic backed up 7 miles on the Santa Ana freeway. It was 101 degrees. A plumber's strike had forced Walt into a brutal choice in the final days, working toilets or working drinking fountains. He chose toilets, and when the fountains sat dry, furious guests accused him of shutting off free water to sell more Pepsi. Restaurants stripped to bare shelves by mid-afternoon. A gas leak shut down part of Fantasyland. Women's high heels sank into fresh asphalt on Main Street. Walt saw almost none of it. He spent the day performing for 90 million television viewers, the largest live broadcast in history to that point, and went home believing it had gone beautifully. He found out the truth from the newspapers. Then he spent the next month fixing every single problem and personally invited people back. In Tomorrowland, the American Dairy Association ran an exhibit called the Dairy Bar, and on the most chaotic day in theme park history, it quietly became a hero. Cold milk, served up as a showcase for the American dairy industry, in a park where cold, anything was disappearing fast. Mothers figured it out quickly and steered their overheated children straight to it. Think about how strange and wonderful that is. Trade associations in the 1950s genuinely believed that if they could just show Americans the story of milk, of butter, of the family farm, the products would sell themselves. So they built shrines to dairy inside an amusement park. Nobody would dream of it now. But on July 17, 1955, with the fountains dry and the soda stands rationing ice, a paper cup of cold milk in Tomorrowland was worth more than anything on any menu. Some of the kids who drank it that day are grandparents now, and when they tell the story, that free milk always makes the cut. Number 11. Cafeteria plates at the Plaza Pavilion. At the end of Main Street, overlooking the water, the Plaza Pavilion opened on day one as Disneyland's Cafeteria, and for families feeding 4 or 5 mouths, it was the sensible choice. You slid a tray down the line, past steam tables, hot roast beef, fried chicken, mashed potatoes and gravy, green beans, a square of cake at the end, and paid for exactly what you took. It was the same cafeteria system feeding office workers and church socials across the country, dressed in Victorian gingerbread trim with a view of the castle. And on opening day, it was one of the few places you could sit down in the shade with a full hot dinner for around $1 per person. The pavilion stood on that corner for 50 years. Millions of trays slid down that line. And it all started on an afternoon when a hot plate of roast beef felt like a miracle. Number 10. A mint julep on the Mark Twain riverboat. The Mark Twain made her maiden voyage around the rivers of America on opening day, a real steam-powered sternwheeler, and on board, guests could buy a mint julep. Without a drop of bourbon in it, naturally, because Walt's no-alcohol rule covered the river too. It was lemonade and mint syrup over crushed ice, cold and sweet and green, served while an honest-to-goodness paddle wheeler churned past Frontierland. 4 days earlier, at Walt's anniversary party, invited guests had cruised on that same boat. Now, a family from Bakersfield stood at the same rail with the same drink. That drink outlived nearly everything around it. The mint julep is still sold at Disneyland today, 70 years later. One of the oldest continuously served items in the park. How many things from July 1955, anywhere in America, can you still buy essentially unchanged? You are looking at one. Number 9. Tuna sandwiches on a pirate ship. In Fantasyland, Chicken of the Sea Tuna sponsored an actual full-size pirate galleon. Sails, rigging, crow's nest, floating in its own lagoon. And inside it they served tuna. Tuna sandwiches, tuna burgers, and their famous tuna pies, eaten below decks or beside the water while children swarmed the ship like a jungle gym. The galleon was being finished as the park opened and welcomed its first crowds at the end of August that first summer, but for the next 14 years, it was one of the most beloved places to eat in America. Think about the audacity. A canned fish company built a pirate ship so your children would associate tuna with adventure. And it worked. A generation of American kids came home from Anaheim demanding tuna sandwiches, and mothers happily obliged at $0.25 a can. It may be the most effective food advertisement ever constructed. It just happened to be shaped like a boat. Number 8. Aunt Jemima pancakes in Frontierland. 3 weeks into that first summer, in early August 1955, Quaker Oats opened the Aunt Jemima Pancake House on the banks of the rivers of America, and it immediately became one of the busiest breakfasts in California. Tall stacks of pancakes with butter and syrup, waffles, sausage, all of it served on a patio where you could watch the Mark Twain steam past. For about 50 cents, a kid got a stack bigger than his head. Here is what made it a phenomenon. Pancakes were the great equalizer of the 1950s table, the breakfast every family already made from the same box mix on Sunday mornings. Eating them beside a frontier river, served hot, without your mother having to stand at the stove, made the ordinary feel like a holiday. The restaurant, later renamed, stood on that exact spot for decades, and the River Belle Terrace serves breakfast there to this day. 70 years of pancakes on the same riverbank, and it began with a syrup company renting space from a cartoonist who was out of money. Third pattern break. Step back and look at what was actually happening here. In 1955, the average American family ate at a restaurant a few times a year. Eating out was for anniversaries and funerals. Disneyland asked something radical of them: to spend an entire day eating every meal away from home, and to enjoy it. That is why every food on this list is so familiar. Hot dogs, pancakes, fried chicken, tuna sandwiches. Walt was not trying to impress anyone. He was trying to make a family from Iowa feel safe spending money. The food had to be their food, just served inside a dream. Get that right, and they would come back. 70 years and 1 billion guests later, it is fair to say he got it right. Number 7. Hand-pulled candy on Main Street. The Candy Palace opened its doors on Main Street 5 days after opening day on July 22nd, And on day one itself, the sweets came from carts and shop counters. Hard candies, suckers, taffy, sold by the piece for pennies. But once the Candy Palace was running, it added something Walt personally loved: a window onto the kitchen, where guests on the sidewalk could stand and watch candy makers pull peppermint and hand-dip chocolates. He put that window there on purpose, and he put the kitchen's exhaust fan where it would blow the smell of cooking sugar onto the street. That is not an accident. That is a man who understood that the smell of candy is a memory before you have even bought anything. Children stood at that glass hypnotized while their parents surrendered their nickels. They still do. The Candy Palace is still on Main Street. Candy makers still work in that window, and the fan still blows the smell of caramel onto the same sidewalk it did during Eisenhower's first term. Number 6. Frito pie at Casa de Fritos. Now for the number that changes how you see your own pantry. In August 1955, 1 month into Disneyland's life, the Frito Company opened Casa de Fritos in Frontierland, serving 5-cent bags of Fritos from a vending machine fronted by the Frito Kid, plus tacos, tamales, and Frito pie, chili and cheese ladled right over corn chips. It was many American families' very first taste of anything resembling Mexican food. But the real story came later. The tortillas were supplied by a local company, and one day a salesman from that supplier noticed Casa de Fritos workers throwing away stale tortillas. He suggested they cut them up and fry them into chips instead. Season them, and you have something special. Those fried, seasoned tortilla chips became so popular at the restaurant that Frito-Lay put them into production nationwide in the 1960s and gave them a name. Doritos, the best-selling tortilla chip on planet Earth, was born from garbage bin thrift at a Disneyland lunch counter. Your grandmother would have approved completely. Number 5. The $1.65 fried chicken dinner at the Chicken Plantation. Down at the far end of Frontierland, where the river bent, Swift ran the Chicken Plantation House, a white-columned southern mansion serving complete fried chicken dinners for $1.65, with a children's dinner for $1. You picked up your plate at the counter, golden fried chicken, sides, roll, and ate at umbrella-covered tables right on the riverbank as the Mark Twain paddled past. On opening day itself, the restaurant was draped in patriotic bunting and used as a stage for a New Orleans dance number with the Firehouse 5+2, Disney's own animators moonlighting as a jazz band before it opened to feed the press and their families. Remember, this was before fast food fried chicken existed almost anywhere. Colonel Sanders was still driving town to town selling his recipe. For most guests, fried chicken this good came from one place: a grandmother's cast iron skillet, and here it was on a paper-shaded riverbank in California. The building came down in 1962 to make room for New Orleans Square. People mourned it for decades. Number 4. Prime rib at the Red Wagon Inn. The fanciest meal in Disneyland on opening day was served at the Red Wagon Inn at the top of Main Street, sponsored by Swift. White tablecloths, chandeliers, stained glass, and antique fixtures salvaged from a genuine 1890s Los Angeles mansion, and a menu crowned by roast prime rib of beef. This was where you took the family if 1955 had been a good year, and it was Walt's own favorite, complete with a private entrance and his own dining room where he could eat unseen and watch his park through the window. Dinner might run you $2 or $3 a plate, real money, nearly a tenth of the average weekly grocery budget for one meal. But that was the point. Disneyland had a bottom rung, the 10-cent hot dog, and a top rung, prime rib under chandeliers, and both stood on the same street. Any family could walk into the same park and find their own version of a perfect day. The Red Wagon Inn became the Plaza Inn in 1965. It is still there. Walt's private door is too. Number 3. Walt's own chili and beans. Here is what the man himself ate. Walt. Disney's favorite food, famously, was chili con carne with beans, and his recipe was pure Midwestern thrift. He liked to blend two ordinary canned chilies together, Gebhardt's for the spice, and Denison's for the heft, insisting the mix beat anything a chef could build from scratch. He kept a small kitchen in his private apartment above the Main Street fire station, where he also kept a grilled cheese press. And during the frantic weeks around opening day, he could look down on his crowds while eating a bowl of canned chili like any working man in America. He put chili on his park's menus, and versions of it never left. You can still order chili on Main Street today, and the Carnation Cafe has served a recipe honoring his. Think about that. The most successful showman of the 20th century, a man who dined with presidents, and his desert island meal was 30 cents of canned chili, doctored the way your grandfather doctored his. On opening day, the king of the castle ate like his guests. Number 2, the brown bag lunches in the parking lot. Now for the food that never touched a Disneyland menu. Thousands of families on opening day, and in the weeks after, did what 1955 families always did on an outing. They packed food. Hard-boiled eggs, bologna sandwiches in waxed paper, a thermos of Kool-Aid, deviled eggs in a Tupperware that had to come home. When the park's restaurants ran empty on Black Sunday, the families who had packed a cooler in the Ford were suddenly the wealthiest people in Anaheim. They tailgated in the parking lot, kids sitting on bumpers eating sandwiches, then went back in for more rides. Disney understood rather than fought it, and by 1957, the park opened Holidayland, an actual picnic ground next door, catered by Swift, where families could spread blankets. That instinct, that you do not go anywhere without food from home, was the last generation's depression training talking. Never assume there will be food where you are going. On July 17, 1955, of all days, the grandmothers were proven absolutely right. Number 1. A cup of cold water. The most precious thing you could put in your mouth at Disneyland on opening day was the one thing you could not find. The plumber's strike had left Walt a choice between finishing the bathrooms or the drinking fountains, and he chose the bathrooms, reasoning that people can buy a drink, but they cannot buy a restroom. So on a 101-degree Sunday, with 28,000 overheated guests, the fountains stood dry, the soda stands ran out of ice, and angry visitors muttered that Disney had rigged the whole thing to sell more Pepsi. A simple paper cup of cold water became the most sought-after refreshment in the happiest place on earth. Parents shared warm thermos dregs. Strangers pointed each other toward working taps. And here is the ending that matters. Within weeks, the fountains flowed, the kitchens were restocked, the ticket system was fixed, and Walt invited the disappointed guests back personally. The park that could not pour you a glass of water on day 1 went on to feed more people than any restaurant company on earth. It just needed one more day. Here is my challenge. Ask the oldest person in your family if they ever visited Disneyland in the 1950s, and ask what they ate, not what they rode, what they ate. Then come tell me in the comments, because I want to know if anyone's grandmother still talks about that pickle barrel and whether the Frito Kid gets more love than the pirate ship. These were not just snacks. They were the first bites of the American vacation as we know it.